Next will be review and discuss the home improvement incentive program. I was like, Mr. Magner, you might as well go right on back up there. It's your turn again.
I was going to say, I don't want to be set down, but as we both prepare budgets as well as if there is a kind of a transition time between our service years relative to this program, it's probably about right now as Don and the team begin to kind of pull together the impact of the incentive program relative to a budgetary number that we need to place in next year's budget relative to those projects that, as Don's going to describe, cause us to be able to make a payment as we are completing those. So Don goes through an estimating process, as we do with so many other elements of our budget, and has just kind of begun to pull together that insight. And by doing that, has really pulled together a lot of data and information about one of the key programs that is really strategic to our neighborhood vitality and neighborhood redevelopment initiative in the home incentive program, improvement incentive program. So Don's pulled together a real good summarization of that. I think, again, continues to tell that story about once a year. We always like to bring in this report to you. It's contextual, not so much on a big budget deliberation, but let you know one of the elements that's in our budget as a result of that. But a great ongoing program. Obviously, right now, the very active housing market in our community, both in new development as well as in redevelopment and refurbishment, this program is being sought out and a lot of inquiries coming our way. So for all those reasons, we placed this on tonight's agenda. Just give Don a few minutes to kind of recap where we are at this time. Don?
Great. Thank you very much. Mayor and City Council, this is always an exciting briefing for me every year. When we first worked on this in 2007, I never imagined we would be talking about $44 million worth of reinvestment via this program in our residential neighborhoods. That number is just, every year I come and it increases about $8 to $9 to $10 million, and it's more exciting every time we get to meet to talk about that. We'll start off with just a little bit of background about the program, as Dan mentioned, for just a little bit of context. The program was first established in February 2007. We officially began accepting applications on April 1st of 2007. Essentially, the program provides a rebate of the city taxes that result from a major home improvement project. So what happens is we take a pre-appraised value of a home. The homeowner comes in and makes that investment and reinvests in the home, and then we take a post-project appraised value. And the math is real easy. We subtract the latter from the former, and we multiply it times the tax rate. And what the council did in 2007 that makes this program so different than any other program anywhere else is they said we're going to do that for 10 years, but we're going to upfront load it. And that's exactly what makes this program so special. It's that all 10 years worth of those tax rebates come back in that April following that very first the very first April following the year of completion for that program. And over again, we hear how powerful that is, particularly to builders and developers or folks who are looking to make improvements to sell their home. That initial payment is key. The purpose of the program is really kind of four things that we keep kind of hovering back to. The first one is obviously to kind of continually encourage reinvestment in our neighborhoods. You may remember to the early 2000s to the mid 2000s, there was an awful lot of impact and emphasis placed on code enforcement. We really started trying to figure out ways to incent people versus forcing or mandating them to do things. And this was one of the key elements of that strategy, was to incent people to do things, to go above and beyond the minimum, to go above and beyond what we could ask them to do with our code enforcement program. And that's why the program is structured in the way it is. It's not trying to have maintenance done to programs. It's looking for substantial reinvestment that will kind of keep our neighborhoods at the forefront in North Texas. The other thing we really wanted to do is to lower the financial burden for homeowners to stay in Richardson. A lot of folks were telling us that their needs had changed, that their life circumstances have changed, and they wanted to stay in Richardson. They wanted to have the big trees. They wanted to have the great location. They wanted to have our great city services, but they also had to make substantial improvements to their homes. This program is a great way to encourage longtime residents or to stay in the city and to make those kind of commitments. It goes a long way, like so many other things we do, like neighborhood vitality, to demonstrate the importance we place and the commitment that you as a council and our community has to our neighborhoods, to keep them as thriving and as alive as we can as a place where people always want to move here. And as Dan mentioned, with the housing market in Richardson the way it is now, where you don't even have to put your house on the market, this is a great example of the programs that we're having. And then finally, it was really to distinguish ourselves, to distinguish Richardson from neighboring communities. And our realtors are helping us do this day in and day out, and we'll talk about the importance that they have for this program a little bit later. But you have a house like this that, and this house could be it could be in Plano, it could be in Garland, but if it's in Richardson and you see this house and you want to move to Richardson and upgrade this house, there's an incentive, there's a reason to do that. And that's why we have these situations turning into these situations all throughout our city, particularly as you'll see kind of in some of our older neighborhoods. This program is having a real impact. A little bit about the process. It's very easy to take part in this program. An application is required, and that application must be submitted prior to construction beginning. And that's such an important part because this is an incentive. It's not simply rewarding people for work that they already have done. We have this in all of our literature. It's on our website. We really preach it every time we go out into the community and talk about the program. And it's something that, because it's very difficult to tell somebody who started and kind of down the road on the program that they can't take part in this great program. And it's something that's really important to keep out there. There's once someone applies and the application is approved, there's a letter that goes out to them with an economic development agreement that's prepared by our city attorney's office. Again, very easy for the applicant. And then throughout the entire process, I think this is very important. Throughout the entire process, while your project is pending, we keep an email update. Mailing list, and we send regular updates like you see in these. And so I know these are a little hard to see, but this is talking about the success of this past year. This is explaining that, hey, be on the lookout. Your Dallas County or Collin County appraisal is going to come out, and that's what your rebate's going to be based on. This is talking about helpful reminders. You have to call for a final inspection. You have to keep receipts. All those things, because we don't want some of the projects are long. Some of them take, a year to a year and a half, and we don't want to lose that connection with our applicants and with the people that are participating. So we have this email update. And then finally, you receive, when you're done, you have your final inspection, you receive a final letter and an incentive payment process fact sheet. I'll just run through you this because this is what you can expect to see or expect to experience once you have your final your project completed. So you have your final inspection, and that can be anywhere this year, for instance. But really, any time of the year it could possibly be. But really the next key time in the year is always October through December. So whether your project is finalized in January or your project's finalized in July, you have to kind of wait to October to December of that year because that's when the appraisal districts are going to start to come back around and they'll do their reassessments. They'll establish that new value sometime around January. Sometime around May through the June, you'll receive your updated appraisal from the appraisal district, as will the city. That usually becomes final sometime in July. You'll receive your updated tax bill in October. That'll be paid to the city in January. And then just a few months later, in April, is when you'll receive your incentive payment. So that's kind of the process an applicant goes through subsequent to completing the project. It can be, as you can see, it could be as little perhaps as 6 months if you finish your project a little later in the year, or it might be about anywhere from 12 to 15 months if you finish your project very early in a year. Just a little bit about our current status of the program. We've had 400 projects so far, and that are eligible for an incentive. So they've kind of done everything I just described. They're exactly where they should be in the process. As I mentioned, there's an estimated $44 million, and that is estimated because some of those projects that have been completed haven't been finalized. We don't know what that new appraised value is. We have 121 projects estimated at $100,000 or more, and 13 projects estimated at $500,000 or more. So as again, now I'll kind of just refer back to some of those goals. That substantial reinvestment. These are people that are staying a lot of times and making those real significant reinvestments in their home because they've lived here for 10, 15 years and they plan on living here for another 25 to 30 years. And that's how you achieve that kind of reinvestment. This is a little bit about our participants and where they're located. One interesting thing, if you look back across the maps over the years as we've done these annual reports, there was always kind of a clustering in this area. and not necessarily all in Canyon Creek. It was more in this particular area here, and I would say kind of, if you had to say, well, where's the center of that, it's probably Fall Creek. But I think it's very interesting, over the last couple years in particular, you see a real clustering in J.J. Pierce / the reservation area, and then you see another real clustering in what I'll just call the Heights, because really it's touched by Heights Park, it's touched by Richardson Heights, it's touched by Cottonwood Heights, and Arapahoe or / Waterview Preservation. So you definitely can see a major clustering occurring here, here, and here. And then there's a nice pattern throughout the rest of the city where folks are taking part in this and benefiting from it. If you look at the number of applications throughout the years, you can definitely see that 2009-2010 period where, in a lot of respects, the market was kind of correcting itself. Financing was a little bit more difficult to come by. All of our building permit records indicate it was a down time. So you kind of expect that would be the case. 2011, we bounced back with 74 projects. And if you look here, we're already at 47 through the end of May. This could be, and may very well be, our most significant, largest year in terms of participation for the program, maybe perhaps getting up somewhere around 100 new projects in 2013. But again, I think you can see a real nice pattern of participation throughout the whole city. When you look at where some of those more significant projects are, again, I think you see a lot of the light colored dot, which is the 500 plus, but look at the dark brown dot at where you're looking at $100,000 plus throughout the city. Again, I think a real nice representation all throughout the city as folks move. I also draw your attention again back to these two clusters, because I think it's interesting as they developed. The Heights area there, that cluster, that represents 90 projects, and 20% of those are over $100,000. So that's a pretty significant number when you think of some of the values of the homes. That's a lot of money, relatively speaking, being invested back in those homes. If you look at the J.J. Pierce Reservation area, that's 30 projects in those two neighborhoods, and 8 of the 30 projects are over $100,000. So again, a real commitment in terms of the types of reinvestment that's taken place. This is just an investment range by year. What I think is very interesting here, and we always are really try to stay tuned into what types of projects and the makeup of the projects, because as you know, you can have multiple projects over the course of 2 years. Count towards your $20,000 investment. So you can have 3 or 4 $3,000 to $5,000 projects, and you add those up, and if you hit that $20,000 minimum investment, that counts. So what you see is at the ends of both of these $100,000 plus and the $20,000 to $40,000 range, this is an interesting group here. There are total, I think there's about 130 projects, and 85% of those have multiple projects for the property owner to hit that number. So it's exactly what we've thought throughout the years. It's that, smaller projects are able to take part in the program. They're just combined with other projects to reach that number, that $20,000 minimum threshold. And then again, over on this side, again, you can kind of see approximately the same number of projects, and that's where you have the significant reinvestment, or in many cases, you have homes being torn down and reconstructed in some of those, and there's even a smaller clustering of that taking place. In terms of the projects that we've incented, these are projects that are actually paid. So these are people that are actually getting paid for the improvements that they made, getting those tax dollars rebated to them. You can see it's very consistent with the overall map of participants. The incentives are very interesting to look at every year. This is eligible in light blue, and this is earned. So you may say, well, why wouldn't you receive a check or a rebate? It could be that the repairs were maintenance in nature, so maybe a roof and foundation repair, something like that. In reality, when you look at the 2 biggest years, that 2010 and 2009, the 2 biggest differences, that's also those same years that I was describing, that the market was really kind of going through a bit of a correction. So if we hadn't started the program in those 2 years, I think we'd probably be somewhere around 96, 97% of the time an applicant could expect to receive a check. As it stands, it's 87% of the time. So 8.7 out of every 10 people are receiving some kind of a rebate of their taxes for the investment that's taking place. Pretty strong numbers in reality. You'll see quite a bit of difference in terms of the next couple of slides in terms of incentives paid. This year, 2012, there was a bit of an anomaly. We had 5 large projects come through all at the same time. These were projects that were tear down. So the home was purchased, the lot was cleared and a new home was put in its place. So those are going to be larger scale incentive payments, and we had 5 of them come through, whereas in years past, the most we had were 2. So that's why you see the spike there. That represents right there $1 million in rebates to taxpayers in Richardson, homeowners in Richardson for their for their reinvestment. So we just eclipsed this year with the payment of the $193,000. We just eclipsed the $1 million mark in terms of incentives paid. That's pretty noteworthy, pretty exciting, really. Again, you'll see the average incentive pay, again, just a little bit of an anomaly in this year because of those larger projects. Now this is pretty cool too. So this is not an estimate anymore. This is the appraisal district sending us the number on these properties. Over that same 5 years, this is $15 million in increased in taxable appraised value as a result of this program and that have come through this program. These are all numbers that have already been confirmed. So that's $15 million above and beyond the value of these properties when they started that took part in this program. And then finally, you can kind of see again the average increase in the appraised value. And again, not to be redundant, but 2012, just a little bit of an anomaly there. Next year, we have 56 projects that are eligible to receive an incentive. These will be projects that would receive their incentive in April of 2014. So that means that they finished their project last year. Sometime between January and December. Right now, the estimate is the estimated budget impact of this incentive group will be right at $300,000. There are 2 large projects that have fallen in here. If you take that average of about $5,500 or so per incentive, and then we look at those outliers and try to anticipate what they may be and add that to the average based on the number of projects eligible, and that's how we come up with that number. As you well know, a lot of our appraisal district numbers will be refined and become a little bit more solid as we move through the summer. So as we get towards the end of the budget process, we'll be able to refine that and really come down on a much more stable number. But we think that's a pretty good place to be right now in terms of estimating. Just finally, I wanted to share with you a little bit about our promotion of this. This is such a neat program. We've got a brochure which we've just updated to make all the numbers fresh and new and make the examples relevant again. This just so happens July, is our HOA edition for our Richardson Today. So this program is going to be featured in the July issue of the Richardson Today. It's always at least featured at least once, usually twice in the Richardson Today every year. Which you all have, at our workshop. And all of our workshops, whether it's our realtors workshops, our neighborhood leadership workshops, or our community meetings, this is a program that we always highlight. I know I've pulled information together for a few council members recently that were speaking at programs, and this is something that everybody wants to talk with. Realtors are a big key in this. I told you earlier, I mentioned this. We have realtors that come in on a very regular basis to pick up our brochures, and we have offices that request so that they can have them right there in their lobby. So they're out promoting this every day and really using it, I think, as an effective tool, particularly when it's a fixer-upper or their homes in nearby cities. This is a real selling point for realtors to be able to sell in Richardson. And then finally, just to make sure, as best as we absolutely can, that no one slips through the cracks, we've updated our building permit application. So now, before we issue a building permit, the person has to check that they're aware that we have this program, so that there can be no confusion later down the road, and that beginning construction issue doesn't arise. We're trying to avoid that at all costs. Because quite honestly, it's about the only thing that I've ever had an issue on with this program. So with that, Mayor, I do appreciate the opportunity to provide you this annual update, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thanks for the great update. It is so exciting, and I love the fact that it's spread out so far across the city. So any other comments from anyone? Mr. Mitchell.
Dawn, this program is accomplished, in my opinion, everything that we set out to accomplish 6-7 years ago with this. And in your opinion, is there anything that, I'd like to say that, it's been successful, but in your opinion, is there anything else that in your opinion that we could probably do to even make it even more successful? And that's not necessarily a question that you or Dan or city staff would need to even answer now, but it's one of those things where we created it and it's extremely successful. But I always wonder, are there things that we could do to even make it more more usable? Sometimes people bring up the fact that the $20,000, maybe lower it down. I'm not sure, we need to have a further discussion on that, but because we want to differentiate between just repairs and actually doing full-flown revitalization. So aside from that, it would be interested to have some kind of discussion to see, are there other things that we can do to even make this even more appealing?
Sure. Appreciate that feedback.
Yeah, but it's much more successful than I ever imagined it would be when we had this discussion. Probably 7 years ago. Thanks.
Great presentation. Thank you very much.